What's up, YouTube? This is another bald-faced hornet removal that I did on August 18th after work. As you can see here, this nest was located under a shelf in an active garden. This nest, like other wasp and hornet nests, would have started in early to late spring of this year from one fertile queen from the year prior, and slowly just grew in size. It would have started with just her as the numbers grew throughout the season. In this case, which kind of follows the trend of most cases, the owners of the property hadn't noticed the nest until about a week ago. And like I said, they have been actively gardening close by, as well as running lawnmowers and things like that past there without any issue. Now, it's hard to tell in the video, but the shelf that they built the nest underneath had tomato stakes on it. And the way that they became concerned about the nest after discovering it was they either picked up or threw a stake on that shelf, which set the nest off into a swarm. Their main concern was that their grandchildren come over and play and hang out in the garden, so these definitely had to go. They were in a bad spot, and the sting of these bald-faced hornets is pretty severe, so it's something you don't want to mess with. Now, as you can see here, I'm just using a shop vac with a little bit of water and some Dawn dish detergent inside of it to kill these. With it being in a garden, we didn't want to use any kind of spray or pesticide or anything like that. As you can see, once I did start, I did have to stop for a moment, and they ended up swarming like crazy, attacking my second camera, which worked out for me because they seemed to have most of their attention on that camera and not myself. But I've always found it fascinating with how small these things are in reality and how hard they can run into things, and you can hear them whacking the camera. So this nest took a little bit longer than normal for me. I think I was probably vacuuming the bulk of the nest for about 45 minutes. I'll talk about that in a few minutes as to what added to some extra time. And then, like I said earlier too, not being able to use any spray at all. Normally I like to use a little bit of spray, leave a little bit of the nest up. That way any of the scavengers or the ones that swarmed out, if I miss them, they come back in the evening and land on that and then eventually die. So one of the things that probably added a little bit of time to this particular removal was my vacuum. I am using a longer, we'll call it an aftermarket hose. And that vacuum's not very powerful to begin with. So some of the ones that normally I would be sucking up a lot easier, I felt like I was missing. I have a video from about a week and a half ago where I did talk a little bit about it, but the idea is to not have a very powerful vacuum that's going to rip the nest apart. The longer that nest is fairly intact, the easier, because it gives them a point to land on, and it's a lot easier to catch them that way than when they're just floating around in the air. The other thing that happened during this removal was the vacuum itself actually became clogged up at one point, and it was still sucking in, but not very strong. And when I went to check it and pulled the hose off, there was probably about 80 wasps that were still stuck in the hose right at the vacuum that flew out. So I got to re-catch those ones twice. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it seemed like they were harder to catch the second time, like they knew what the drill was. So it's the first time I've made that mistake. Something I'm going to keep an eye out for, because I did realize how it became clogged later. So if you did see the video that I did post probably about a week and a half ago, I believe, that was also a bald-faced hornet nest. The numbers of this nest were definitely larger in count. I think I had figured out that other nest from a week and a half ago had just over 200 inside of it. This one, after counting at the end, which I do show at the end of this video if you want to watch, this one I counted around 463 total. I would say plus or minus a couple. And the other thing that I did find interesting, which if anyone is more of an expert than me and has an answer, I appreciate it. But I did count out what I believe to be 14 queens in that catch. Now, I do understand that there's only one fertile queen in the nest, and any other queens would be the potential queens for next year, which would fertilize and hibernate over. But I did think that seemed to be a lot of queens for this time of year. Now, again, I'm certainly not an expert on the matter, The way that I'm going off of this is when I looked at these larger wasps that were in the nest, I did identify that all 14 of those did have a stinger. So I don't believe they were drones. I know that the drones don't sting, so I'm assuming they don't have a stinger. So if anyone knows for sure, please comment in the comment bar. I'd like to know. So again, I did talk about it in my last video, but if you haven't seen it, like I said earlier, so these are bald-faced hornets. Now, they're referred to as hornets in that name, but they're actually a wasp. These are a type of yellow jacket. There seems to always be a lot of confusion about this. Some of the people that will call or contact me will say, hey, I have bees. And my first question is are they actually bees or are they some type of wasp or hornet? So unlike honeybees, these do not make any kind of honey. All that they do simply is they start a nest, lay eggs, which develop into larvae, and then eventually pupate into full-grown adults. And they just keep doing that and doing that. Their numbers build up throughout the year, and then towards the end of the year, queens from that year fly out, mate with drones, and then hibernate over for the winter. The rest of the colony dies that's in the nest. And then in early to late spring of the following year, that fertilized queen comes out, and that one queen selects a location and then starts the nest over, and the cycle continues. The workers of the nest, when they go out, they will prey on other insects or spiders, and they'll bring those back and basically feed them to the larvae inside of the comb. The larvae, as a result, excrete a byproduct, which is sugary, which the adults then feed on. The other thing that these workers are doing as they go out of the nest is they use their mandibles and they chew up pieces of wood, and then they in which come back, and that's how they build these nests. So these nests are technically paper, we'll call them, but that's how they build them, from those workers going out with that chewed up wood that they're bringing back, and then they're using their mandibles and their saliva, and they're just adding layer upon layer. And as the comb expands inside, the nest is expanding on the outside. So all I'm really doing here is just taking my time. Like I said, the longer that nest is intact and has the original hole, the easier they are to catch. As you've seen here, I've been tapping on this shelf, which does set off any that are inside, and then they come out in groups. And then the remainder that you're seeing right now are either ones that swarmed or the foragers that were out collecting either insects or wood or, whatever else they were collecting, and they're coming back. Just to give you an idea of the garden, quick little pan around. It's a really nice garden that they have. As you can see, there's a couple pathways that they mow with the mower, then everything else is just raised beds. I set this up for a little bit and just let it run. I was able to get a good angle with the shelf there. Like we've talked about before, this is just a bucket head shop vac, very inexpensive one with a little bit of water and some soap on the inside. And as I've mentioned before, I am wearing a full bee suit, top and bottom. I always wear a hat and safety glasses. These can spray venom. And I also have bee suit gloves on, which is very important too. Now, as I did mention, they can spray venom. I did have one during this removal that did fly on my veil and did attempt to spray some venom. The glasses helped me out. I did have a little bit that seemed to have kind of got down in my eyes from some sweat. The stuff definitely isn't fun to get in your eyes, but it's not the end of the world either. All right, so I've been here for a little while now, and the numbers have come down significantly. So I'm just slowly starting to tear this apart. And again, I'm not in that big of a rush. The faster you tear this down, if you are trying to vacuum up as many as you can, the easier it is while that nest is still there. All right, here's the first shot of the inside with the comb. You can see there's some of the cells that are capped off and a little bit of larvae. This nest had a total of 4 layers of comb at the time whenever I pulled it out. So we'll have a couple different shots of this, but the white cells you see that are capped off, those are cells that the larvae is pupating in currently. And then you can see right there on the edge some of the larvae that's moving around and wiggling. Okay, this first layer here, which actually was on the bottom, that's the newest layer of comb. All right, so from what I can tell, I believe this was the queen, the original queen that started this nest. She was unable to fly. As you can see, she is trying to sting me a little bit. They still are able to sting. The combination of catching her and pulling that comb out pretty much guarantees that this nest has no chances of coming back. Those wasps that you saw earlier that were swarming and flying all around, I did catch most, if not all of them. But even so, any left behind, they're going to be dead, in a few days. They're not really going to be an issue anymore. You can see here just what's left of that hollow cavity. That's all just the shell of the nest. There's no comb left inside. At this point here, I'm just trying to vacuum up the last of the ones coming back. I did set the vacuum up for a good while, probably 20 minutes, and went off and talked to the owners of the property to also vacuum up as many as I could. Pretty much when I left, there was maybe one still buzzing around at the end of this. And again, there may have been a couple more that came back later. But like I just said, they won't be an issue. This nest or hive is not coming back. Here's another shot of what's left at this point. You can see the big hollow cavity. That's where that comb was. And like I said, everything that remains is just that outer layer of the nest that they had built and continued to expand out as the comb itself was expanding inside. All right, here's a shot of the bucket after I got home. Like I said, it's just soapy water. And I'm gonna dump these out, and you'll see there's quite a bit. A little bit of nest material in there as well as some grass and stuff, but the majority of that is all bald-faced hornets. Since I did see so many large ones when I was vacuuming them up, I decided to count these out. I was curious to see how many were in this anyway. Like I said, I ended up with 463 total, give or take a couple, with 14 that I took a closer look at, and I'm pretty sure were all queens. As I said earlier, only one of them would have been a fertile queen, but the other ones would have been the queens for next year. To identify them, there are some pictures online where you can just go off of the coloration, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm also looking for stingers. And again, if anyone knows, I believe the drones don't have a stinger. So this is later, this is a couple hours after taking the nest down. You can see one of the pupating adults had chewed out the cap and was ready to emerge. So unfortunately for this wasp, they picked a bad day to come out. I figured I'd get a shot of some larvae and also open up a couple of these cap cells as well. So here's one of the larvae. This is what the adults would be bringing in, pieces of insects to feed. And then as a byproduct, they excrete that sugary waste, which the adults can also feed off of. And these white cap cells are all the pupating larvae that eventually emerge as a fully grown adult. So you can see here, I'll take a couple out, and you can see that they're starting to basically grow their legs and their wings and everything like that in that cell. That's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you found this content interesting. If you have any questions or comments, please comment on the comment bar. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to keep trying to get as much of this content as I can. Like I said, I just kind of do this for fun. I don't do this necessarily for money. And hopefully I'll get some more hives taken down. I've got different friends calling that are starting to notice nests on their property. But thanks for stopping by, and hopefully you come back again for future content. Thanks.